I'm Amy from moonmindology.com, and today I want to revisit Keir Starmer's chart. So I've moved his ascendant around a little bit and I've come to the conclusion that he is a Cancer. So I used his education to try and get a better understanding of what ascendant he might be. And before I thought he was a Libra ascendant, but I've had some complaints from people saying that he wasn't charming enough to have a Venus ascendant, and viewers felt that this was completely wrong. So I was trying to line up more other aspects of his life, as opposed to focus more on his marriage and things like that. And I was kind of willing to overlook Venus on the ascendant, but of course I have to address it, as the predictions just weren't quite right. But hopefully we can now make some accurate predictions and rectify. Rectification isn't the nicest job in the world. And I think there's also a possibility that he's an Aquarius rising, as it would give him a Lakshmi yoga. But I have to run with something, and this is what I'm going with. Just going to go with a Cancer. So we have Rahu on the ascendant, and there is a sense of destiny, and he'll have lots of turbulence in his life, and there's an attachment to money, material, wealth, and I think this is also almost something that can keep him trapped, and it gives him a lot of egocentric, domineering personality traits that I think comes from a place of insecurity and overcompensation for his own shortcomings. And his ascendant would be, in my opinion, in Ashlesha, which is symbolised by the snake, and this is the clinging star, which is associated with constriction and squeezing of the life out of someone. And he's certainly squeezing those poor old pensioners. So Ashlesha makes people unable to receive criticism as well. And there can be a misuse of power, as well as an obsession with power, which also includes a potential mistrust of people in general. And the chart ruler is in the third house, so there is no doubt that he is brave, passionate, which would have been what made him so interested in football and politics. But there can be a short attention span. And in general, I think he'll be quite lucky with travel and do well in his early education. The moon and Mercury is in the third house, and Mercury is very strong in its own sign. So he would love to travel, perform, express himself. And this can manifest itself in sports, music, but certainly later in life, an incredible communication ability. So he could have been very strong in sales, but he always would have been drawn to arguments, debates. And it's only natural that he went into law and then into government. And he will have a great head for facts as well, figures, and he can use them against you. And I'm not sure if he knows any other languages, but he could do very well with languages if he put his mind to that. And he will be so talented with business. And there's no shadow of a doubt that he is incredibly intelligent. The moon gets a powerful aspect from K2, and this is probably contributed to his mother's illnesses, and there can also be some anxiety and some damage to his emotions, and also the common sense as well. And this can result in somebody who likes, or who doesn't like to, who just takes things personally. But he may have a spiritual interest, or an interest in a occult or ghosts or something like that. He has a Shakata yoga, which brings fluctuating fortunes, and Jupiter being in the 6th from the moon, which is what this yoga is, it creates obstacles in health that can influence his character. And Venus is in his own sign, very strong, with Neptune in the 4th. This is going to be great for his sense of happiness. So he always would have been surrounded by some sense of luxury. So his stories of having a really hard time growing up and being poor, if this is his chart, it's untrue. His mother would have been very creative, encouraged him to experience culture and art. And this makes him very democratic. Sorry, Freudian slip. Freudian slip, not fraudulent slip, sorry. Ugh. So diplomatic and popular, as this is in the 4th house, and it links to education. So this is why he was able to get a very nice degree, attend prestigious institution, and there's also links to receiving luxurious gifts and having very powerful friendships that he benefits from. Sounds strangely familiar. But Neptune can damage this and bring scandal around the luxuries that he has, and there can also be deep emotional issues with his mother especially. Now, his mother was very ill with a crippling disease, and Neptune does bring that confusion and uncertainty to this house. Mysterious things can happen. There can be situations or secrets in the family home with the mother that are difficult to understand. And because Neptune is about drugs and Venus can be very indulgent, I wouldn't be surprised if she did get addicted to some kind of medication, whether it was pain medication or she did self-medicate in some way, shape or form for her illness. But Venus is so strong, and it's in its own house with Digbala. So there was a really close relationship with his mother, and it would have been pleasant, and this also links to nice property as well. The sun is in the second house in its own sign. It's very strong with Uranus and Pluto, and interestingly, he can be quite the spendthrift, as malefics in the second house can burn up your money, and money is very important to him, and he wants to secure his own security. And this is what drives people to these financially powerful positions as well. It's a sense of insecurity. But when we have malefics in the second, there can also be dishonesty. And his communication skills are really powerful. But I think the big thing I see here is that he is power hungry and can deceive other people. But the long and short of it is, he is very good at it. People in power like him, have a strong relationship to the government, but there is still a possibility of incurring financial hardship from the government. Considering that he works in this position, it does make me wonder what his son Darshas could bring. And he could have had a lot of disruption in his early childhood, and Uranus being so close to the sun, that tells me there is a significant separation from his father. And Pluto would have made his father feel to him incredibly overbearing and controlling, and there could have been a lot of uncertainty in his early life, and this would have resulted in self-esteem issues, which then becomes somebody who can be a control freak. And this combination of Sun and Pluto, it's a real red flag. He's ruthless and can be blinded by his own beliefs and dogma as well. Then we have Mars in the 12th, and it's singing Ardra, and the 12th house is about endings, and Ardra is about rebuilding after a disaster. And Keir Starmer is no stranger to these kinds of problems. He's lived around death, illness, he likes to fight for the underdog, and with Mars being in the 12th, this is very much the position of somebody who is, outwardly aggressive, but there can also be a lot of passive aggression. Sorry, not openly aggressive. But Mars rules the 10th, and this goes to the 12th, which shows me he likes working in institutions, charities, government, and he has done all three. And I'm pretty sure that he has given free legal advice to some protesters in the past. And he was the director of public prosecutions as well. And Mars gets a really strong aspect from Jupiter, and this is going to be a real push in him wanting to enter politics. Mars and Jupiter combinations are often seen in politicians. And not only that, Jupiter is about law, and it's aspecting his 10th ruler, which is probably why he went into law. And with Mars in the 12th house, it aspects the 7th, and that's not great for marriage. He did the right thing, waiting until he was older to get married, as Kuja dosha is, it's not great for people marrying young, and it can cause problems. And I'd probably say he struggles to sleep, and this could be to do with an overactive mind, but there can also be problems with thieves and enemies, and this can lead him to be quite paranoid. So I do wonder whether his security detail is higher than most previous prime ministers because of that fact. Mars aspects Mercury very tightly, and this is going to make him love love an argument and speak his mind. And he's a quick thinker and he can get his words across. He can be very critical, but there's also a good sense of humour, a very witty humour that is complex, it's intelligent, but there is a tendency towards over-analysis as well. And I can see him being someone that can research a topic to nearly the point of obsession, probably because he refuses to be wrong and always wants to win that argument. Jupiter is in the 8th and he will have great longevity, but he has to be careful of his liver, spleen, allergies. But he's got a very curious mind. He wants to know how the world works. He can deal with other people's money, banking, insurances, taxes, of course. But Jupiter is damaged in the 8th house and he will lack faith. Jupiter is the karaka of the 9th house, which can cause problems with his ethics, relationship, his father, foreigners and teachers, and there can be problems with arrogance, as well as creating problems with the relationship between him and his children. The sun does lift confidence for him, and that will give him some ability to public speak and give him a real boost in intelligence, the ability to attain knowledge as well. But there's a deep pride that can leave him arrogant or problematic. A strong Saturn and Ketu are conjunct in his 7th house. So this doesn't bode well for his marriage, and this could play a factor in delaying his marriage as well. I think he got married finally when he was in his mid-40s, which is, of course, towards the later side. And there can be a struggle to work within the marriage, as there's a lot of malefics in his 7th house, and he can hold on to his relationships longer than other people would because you've got that Saturn of staying. So, staying in relationships or for the children out of comfort, convenience. And his wife can also have a mixed victim mentality or be unusual. There can be deception. There are problems with authority, and I would say that his wife is probably a very serious person. I would have said he would have married somebody potentially older, but she is younger than him. And I know that because I've looked it up. But there's also a sense of martyrdom here in the relationship where he may feel like he does more than the other party. And, despite having that beautiful 4th house, Saturn does aspect this point, which can really reduce his sense of happiness as well. And I think that we really have seen the way that he sees life, and he's had a lot of hardships, but he tends to mostly be quite happy, has an element of luxury around them, but there is an attachment to material things that, and that's something that he feels that he can control, which is why he does it. And I think he puts a lot of his energy into that. The relationship between the moon and Jupiter isn't great. So that says to me he isn't the kind of person with eternal optimism. He does lose faith, and he really has to fight for a cause in order to feel like he's part of something. And there have been rumours that he isn't seen wearing his red wedding ring and stuff like that. And he could well have a divorce, but especially with this chart. But I would say that the relationship is probably very serious and very difficult. He is currently in the dasha of Saturn, and he's been there since 2007. And as Saturn sits with that Ketu, there is a kind of bittersweetness here that entails a destiny. And he has, of course, risen to great heights in the government, but there's a lot of problems with scandal. And that's because Jupiter is in the 8th house. But it has an aspect from Pluto and the Sun, and in his charts it's given him great power and leadership. But this ends in 2026, when he then goes into the dasha of Mercury. And, I think that's going to be fantastic for him. He will really shine, and I do believe that it's going to be great. But his D10 isn't activated with Mercury. His D10 is activated by Mars, Venus. And there is also a little bit with Saturn aspecting the first house, and Jupiter, which also activates the 1st as well. So we can see Saturn and Jupiter really did pull some energy to enable him to win the election. And the whole of Saturn would have been great for his career. and it probably coincided with him entering politics or getting a government job. So will he complete a full term? There is a possibility that he won't, as that Darcy change is not significant in regards to his career, but Mercury is so strong and it's so great that it could actually symbolise a more stable time in his career. But I don't think that he would really win a second election, presumably being in 2028. But if he waits after August 2029, then I think he will be in a sub-dasha of Venus, and then he could probably get back into power. But let's have a look at his transits. So around the time that he became the Prime Minister, he had Jupiter in the sky aspecting his natal Saturn, which would have been quite significant. Saturn's in his 8th house until the end of March. And so he may start to see scandals slow down a little bit when that leaves. Then again, Jupiter is moving into his 12th, which could indicate an ending of sorts during 2025. But I don't think that he's really going to stop having problems until Jupiter goes into Cancer, which is 2026. And I think that's really going to bolster his public appearance and be good for his personal strength. In January, Jupiter is going to aspect his moon, and this will happen again in March 2025. So this is going to give him a lot of personal power, and I think he will have like improvements in his relationships, especially with big institutions, with powers that be around the world as well. So this could be an interesting time for his marriage and also for personal business. And he could have to deal with scandal of sorts, and even a breakdown or a trial in his marriage. And this transit could also bring him some public scandal, which can bring some problems. In May, Jupiter aspects Venus, and this could bring an ending, or he could move back to be more behind the scenes in some way, shape or form. I don't know how Starmer get on with Donald Trump, but America is an important relationship to have, and he's been very critical of Trump in the past, and I'm not sure how this is going to bode for him or even the United Kingdom as a whole. But Venus is in the 4th and it rules the 11th, so this could be a time where he's feeling uplifted, and there could be relationships and deals happening between foreign institutions. But I think that he will be looking to move more towards the EU and away from the United States. And he's still influenced by America, but I think the green agenda stuff is going to take a bit of a backseat for the next 4 years, irrespective of whether Starmer is interested in the green agenda or not. In July, Jupiter will be transiting Mars and aspect his natal Jupiter, and this is really going to activate his Dastana houses, and I think this could potentially be catastrophic for his relationship, for taxes, and maybe even his health, but also how he comes across in general. So this may be a point where he has really struggled to maintain his position in government as well. Well, actually, I'm just going to make a comment that I forgot to put in, actually. So I said earlier when Mars is in Ardra, and one thing I forgot to mention there, actually, is the rebuilding and taking on broken things. And one thing he said a lot is that I'm inheriting a broken, in-debt government and country. And I think that's significant to see the similarities between that. You can see that in the chart as well. So I found that incredibly interesting that almost plays out in the 12th house, especially as that's your institutions as well, and your things that are owned by other people, charities and whatnot. But thank you very much for watching. I shall see you next time. Thanks. Bye.